I had just returned from a long day at work when my phone buzzed with a message that felt both surprising and oddly familiar. "Hey, it's Maya. I'm in town for a few days. Can I crash at your place tonight?" Maya, my cousin. We hadn't seen each other in nearly 7 years, not since we were teenagers at a chaotic family wedding. Our families lived in different states, and though technically cousins, we had always been more like distant acquaintances connected by blood, not bond. I hesitated for a moment, then typed back, "Of course, come by any time." By 9 p.m., she was at my door, her suitcase rolling behind her, her hair damp from the rain. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. Gone was the tomboy I remembered. In her place stood a confident, graceful woman with curious eyes and a tired smile. "You look exactly the same," she joked, stepping inside. "And you look different," I replied, unsure how else to say it. She laughed, tossed her bag aside, and settled in like she had always lived there. We spent the next hour catching up. She had finished university, was freelancing as a designer, and had decided to take a short break from everything: work, people, even family. I offered her tea, which she accepted, and we sat on the balcony, watching raindrops trace paths down the city windows. There was something unspoken in the air, an easy comfort, maybe nostalgia, but I couldn't quite name it. The apartment, once silent, was now filled with soft conversation and shared laughter. She told me about a failed relationship. I told her about my job that barely excited me anymore. It felt natural, but also a little surreal. "I missed this kind of quiet," she said, stretching her legs on the couch. "No pressure, no expectations. Just being." I nodded, unsure why her presence affected me so much. There was nothing romantic about it, at least not in a way I would admit. But something in her voice made me listen more closely. Something in her smile made me want to keep her talking. By midnight, she was already in the guest room, and I stood in the kitchen finishing my tea, wondering why my heart felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was just the rain. Or maybe it was something I hadn't yet allowed myself to consider. Before heading to bed, I knocked gently on her door. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she replied softly. "Thanks for letting me stay. It means a lot." "Anytime, Maya," I said, and meant it. As I closed my bedroom door behind me, I realized something had shifted. I just didn't know what, or where it would lead. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just another family visit. It was the beginning of something I couldn't yet name, but would never forget. The next few days passed in a quiet rhythm, like a song we both knew by heart but had forgotten the words to. Maya stayed longer than she'd planned. One night turned into 3, then 5. Each morning, she would brew the coffee before I even left my room. Each evening, we found ourselves talking under the dim kitchen light long after dinner plates had gone cold. There was a closeness developing, undeniable, but impossible to explain. She wasn't just crashing at my place. She was slipping into the spaces of my life, softly, naturally. I began to notice how she leaned in a little too closely when she laughed, how her eyes lingered when I wasn't looking. And yet, neither of us said anything. We let the silence stretch, holding its breath with us. One afternoon, we found ourselves in the middle of a city market. She reached for a scarf, held it up to my neck, and smiled. "Too bold?" "Maybe," I said, "but you've always liked bold." She raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You remember that?" I did. More than I wanted to admit. I remembered how fiercely she argued as a teenager, how fearlessly she spoke her mind. That version of her was still there, just quieter now, more measured, and that made her presence feel even more dangerous. That night, we sat on the balcony again. The city glowed beneath a velvet sky. Maya wore that same scarf, and she looked beautiful without trying. "Do you ever think about how weird this is?" she asked suddenly. "What do you mean?" "Us, being here, like this." I paused, caught off guard by her honesty. "All the time," I admitted. "We didn't move. We didn't touch. But something passed between us in that moment. Raw, electric, unfiltered. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and I let her. We sat like that for a long while, saying nothing. When we finally went inside, she lingered at the doorway to her room. "Good night," she said, barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Good night." But neither of us slept much. That night blurred the lines we had spent years assuming were permanent. It wasn't a kiss or a confession or anything that could be explained. It was something deeper, an acknowledgement that whatever this was, it had become real. We were no longer just cousins catching up. We were two people tangled in something unspeakable. And the silence between us was beginning to say too much. The tension in the apartment was no longer subtle. It hung in the air like static, sharp and invisible, charged by all the things we hadn't said. On the 6th night, we didn't sit on the balcony. Instead, we stayed inside. The lights were dimmed, the television playing something neither of us was watching. Maya sat curled on the couch, her knees tucked under her, staring at the floor like it held answers. I couldn't take it anymore. "Maya," I said carefully, my voice barely above a murmur. "What are we doing?" She didn't look up, but I saw her hands clench in her lap. "I don't know," she replied. "It wasn't supposed to feel like this." That was all the confirmation I needed. This wasn't one-sided. We were in it together, even if neither of us had the words to describe what it was. I moved closer, sitting beside her. The room felt too small, the silence too loud. "I can't pretend I don't feel something," I said. "Can you?" She hesitated. Then she looked at me, not with confusion or fear, but with an ache I didn't expect. "You were always kind to me," she began, her voice steady but low. "Even when others weren't. I think I confused safety for something else. And now?" She swallowed hard. "Now, I don't know how to undo it." For a moment, I thought she might lean in. I thought we might shatter the last of our restraint. But instead, she stood up and walked to the window. "I should have told you something earlier," she said, her back still turned. "What?" She sighed, a long exhale that seemed to drain the warmth from the room. "I have a boyfriend. Or, I had one. We were on a break. I came here because I needed space. I didn't expect us, to feel so complicated." My stomach tightened. The confession hit harder than I expected. Not because she had someone else, but because she had let this unfold while hiding it. "So this was a distraction?" I asked, voice hollow. She turned around, her eyes shining. With guilt. "I didn't plan any of it. I felt safe with you. I forgot how much that mattered. But I never meant to lead you on." Those last words felt like a slap. She had meant to find space, clarity. And I, naively, had mistaken that for something else entirely. For something real. The silence between us, once filled with possibility, now felt unbearable. "I think I should leave tomorrow," she said quietly. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I had no idea what else to say. Something had changed, and there was no undoing it now. The morning Maya left, the apartment felt like a memory that hadn't quite finished forming. Her suitcase stood by the door, her presence still thick in the air, even as she avoided meeting my eyes. We didn't talk much. There were no dramatic goodbyes or emotional breakdowns, just a quiet understanding that whatever had grown between us could no longer live in silence or shadows. I carried her bag to the elevator. She followed a step behind, arms crossed, head down. As the door slid open, she turned to me. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "I never meant to confuse you. Or myself." I gave a slight nod, unsure what forgiveness looked like in a moment like this. "Take care of yourself," I offered, because it was easier than saying what I really felt. That I wished she had never come, or maybe that I wished she had never left. And just like that, she was gone, The days that followed were slow and disorienting. I avoided the guest room, couldn't bring myself to wash the mug she used every morning. Her scarf still hung on the coat rack, untouched, like a forgotten promise. I didn't hear from her for weeks. But one evening, as I scrolled through social media, her name appeared again, tagged in a photo by someone else, a man. Smiling with his arm around her waist, both of them dressed up for what looked like a formal event. The caption read, "Couldn't be happier to be back together again. Stronger than ever." So that was it. The boyfriend she mentioned had become the man she returned to. And what we shared, if it could be called that, was just a detour in her story. A moment of confusion she had already moved past, while I was still untangling what it meant. It stung. But over time, something unexpected happened. I began to feel lighter. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally saw it clearly. Maya wasn't the love I had been waiting for. She was the mirror that revealed how lonely I had become, how desperate I was for connection, for meaning. She didn't betray me. I betrayed myself by pretending we were something more when all the signs said otherwise. Eventually, I washed her mug, put the scarf in a drawer, opened the guest room windows, and let the air shift. Time moved forward, as it always does. And though I don't know if I'll ever forget those days or the feelings they stirred, I've learned not to hold on to moments that were never mine to keep. Some stories begin quietly, then vanish just as softly. But the lessons they leave behind echo far longer than the people ever could.